and welcome everybody to today's video. We finally arrived at the midpoint of the Crash Course series. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Eriss. I mostly make illustrations, but I'm also known for coming out with at least one fully finished webcomic every year since 2020. I started making webcomics 7 years ago. In these 7 years, I've learned a lot, so I'll be sharing my knowledge with you during this 5-episode Crash Course series. I will say I am not a professional, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, so I don't recommend you take everything I say during this series as gospel, but rather as a general guide to get you started. I especially recommend this series for people who want to start making their first webcomic, but there will be tips and tricks mentioned throughout that could help out more advanced creators as well. This time we'll be talking about both 3D backgrounds, where to get them, how to make them, how to use them, and specifically comic character design. These two topics felt like there wouldn't be enough to talk about to make them into their own standalone videos, which is why we're doing a double topic today. If you are only here today to learn about character design, skip to this timestamp that appeared on the screen. We'll be first talking about backgrounds. As many of you might know, 3D backgrounds are often used in webcomics to save time and to not have to draw every background by hand every time. It is a true lifesaver, especially when you're on a tight deadline. First, we'll be talking about pre-made models, but we'll also get into how you can make your own models. There are 3 ways to go about using 3D models, and I happen to use all 3 alternating between them. Mostly because my model file types are kind of different depending on the project, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The 3 different ways are dependent on the programs you're using. There's Blender, SketchUp, and Clip Studio Paint. This one is excluded if you don't have it, of course, but the other 2 I would recommend, as they are free. Even SketchUp is if you are using the 2017 version. Before we go look for models, however, it is important to know what file types these programs are able to use and exchange between each other. Here's the list of the file types that Blender can import. SketchUp can import DAE and SKP files. Careful with the new SKP files. If you are using the SketchUp 2017 version, sometimes they will not load. Clip Studio can use .obj and .fbx files. .dae is common between Blender and SketchUp. There is a plugin you can install so that SKP files can also be imported into Blender. I'll leave a link to that in the description. And .fbx and object files are common between Blender and Clip Studio Paint. Now that we know what file types we're looking for, we can head on over to several ready-made 3D model websites. Normally, you can select what file types you're looking for, which is very useful. The reason I use multiple programs, even though I personally prefer SketchUp, is because sometimes the model I was looking for was simply not available in the set file types that SketchUp uses, so I end up using Blender instead for some of these. The sites that I use are Sketchfab, SketchUp's 3D Warehouse, CG Trader, and I've also used Acon 3D in the past. These websites all have both paid and free options available, except for, I believe, SketchUp's 3D Warehouse. I've not come across any paid models yet. I mentioned in a previous video that you should make a list of both the backgrounds that appear in your comic according to your script, as well as the outfits your characters will wear. This is where they are important. If you have a list of things to go through, it'll be easier to collect them faster. Here's the type of list I made for myself, for example, for collecting 3D backgrounds. Now on to how to import them into your 3D programs. Blender, very simple. You make sure you click on Import, select the file type you want to import, and if you don't see it listed, go into the plugins menu and make sure that it is added into the plugins list. Load it in and you're done. Troubleshooting Eriss here. .fbx files, from my experience, often have a problem with missing textures for no particular reason. There's a very simple fix to this. Simply go into the File menu and look for Missing Files. Here you just select the folder that the textures are stored in. Sometimes there's still missing textures after this. I unfortunately have not found a way to fix that yet. If anyone does know, please let me know in the comments below. SketchUp, another very simple one. You simply import the .dae or .skp file you downloaded and it should appear. Troubleshooting Eriss here once again. If it seems like it's loading forever, unfortunately, I personally just give up and try to find another model. Usually there's something wrong with the file that I wouldn't possibly know how to fix. I'm sorry, sometimes troubleshooting Eriss doesn't know the answer either. The last one is Clip Studio Paint. All of these programs have their own benefits, which we'll talk about once we get to the application segment. For Clip Studio Paint, you can directly import object or FBX files into the 3D modeler. But I've often ran into the problem of them not loading in their textures. So I usually go and fix that in Blender, save it as a separate file, then import that into the 3D modeler. Then you simply save it and now it can be found in your 3D assets. Now before we move on to application, I also wanted to say a few words about creating your own models. The advantage to this is of course full control, but it's also a lot more work and sometimes you don't need every single background to look exactly how it did in your head. This is best used for important backgrounds such as something as personal as a character's bedroom, or maybe an incredibly important scene actually does need to look a certain way, in which case I'd recommend you do the model yourself. It's not as hard as it looks. I personally like to use SketchUp to build 3D because it's less overwhelming to me and I'm much more comfortable with it than Blender. I know, however, that a lot of people love Blender and that there's certainly more tutorials for Blender than there are for SketchUp, at least I think. So pick your poison here, whatever you're more comfortable with. I know that there's a video of me building the hallway I used in my Flying School Reboot release video, but I will not be showing how to deal with 3D building in this video. I am certainly not an expert and I mostly just use pre-made parts, to be honest. I'm sure there's people who can explain it all to you guys way better than I ever could. Now we will look into how to apply these backgrounds. Personally, what I like to do with Blender and SketchUp is just taking a screenshot, very simple, nothing crazy. With Clip Studio, obviously we have the 3D backgrounds, so we should just position them on our page that Clip Studio lets us use very graciously. Then what I like to do is add a few effects, as you can see, like a main color with a lighten color, then a gradient from bottom to top. Then if I feel like it and it looks nice, a gradient around the character's head to bring more focus to it. Sometimes I use Gaussian blur on my backgrounds. As it is only a tool to put the characters into context, it's not always important for them to be crisp. And here are the results using each program. They all have their own advantages, like Blender's lighting, SketchUp's built-in black outlines. You could even color those separately using the Effects tab in Clip Studio Paint. Then Clip Studio models being very practical. You can also color the outlines in the same way. However, you are only able to have these outlines if you have the EX version, unfortunately. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's it for the 3D section of the video. I hope you guys found it helpful. Now on to what apparently everyone's been waiting for since the start of this series. Character design. Now I will say, we will only focus on comic character design today. You always have to approach character design differently depending on the purpose and context in which design will be used. For example, a good rule of thumb for comic character design is that they should look cool, yeah, but they should also be easy to draw, because you're gonna be drawing these characters over and over and over again. And I know some of you are looking at Edith right now from Not Your Typical Reincarnation Story. Yes, she is beautiful, but she's not the standard. Am I always amazed by Reincarnation Story's extravagant designs? Yes, of course, they're incredible. But let's not shoot for the stars just yet. Nobody said you can't make character designs more complicated as you get more experience with comic making, but definitely don't start with that. It might surely I actually think it will overwhelm you. Here's my character design evolution over several series. You can see they're getting more detailed every time, but not so much so that it would be cumbersome. Comic character design doesn't differ that much from just any character design. You still want a recognizable silhouette, which is the easiest to achieve with cartoony styles, But I've also seen very smart silhouettes with more realistic styles as well, so nothing is stopping you. Basically, what this means is that when you put a color over your character, you can still recognize who it is from a glance. For comic characters in particular, I'd also say shape and color language is incredibly important. It's important no matter what, don't get me wrong, but for narrative stories, there's so many fun ways to mess around with this. Normally, soft-looking shapes are associated with positive characters, and sharp ones are more likely associated with negative characteristics. Colors also have their own meanings, which you can incorporate into your designs. Black is normally associated with evil characters and white is good characters, you know, the usual stuff. But comics are so lovely, they let you do both visual and narrative storytelling. How fun! Why don't we mess around with it and use it to our advantage a little? For example, switch the roles of these shapes and colors. Make the white-themed, soft-looking person a menace, and the black-themed, sharp-shaped fellow an absolute sweetheart. We've seen too many of the same thing. It's time to switch it up a little. Real life isn't so black and white either, after all. I once did this with my own comic, Rigor Mortis, and people seem to really like it. Basically what I'm saying here is have fun here. Yes, they have meaning and you can use it the way they come, but you can also add your own flavor to it from time to time. Surprise everyone, deceive everyone. Another thing I love to do with designing couples in particular is making them either match or complement each other with their colors and even maybe shapes that appear in their design. However, I do like to make siblings match colors-wise more and couples kinda mirror each other more often. But that's a story for another day. It doesn't need to jump out at your face, or it can, however you see fit for your own characters. I mean, I have examples of both. For example, Mason and Andre from my upcoming comic, Ace of Thieves, their masquerade outfits are mirroring each other in subtle ways, while Ryle and Oro from another one of my planned comics are kind of opposites that jump out at your face at first glance. Have fun with it, go crazy, go stupid, as they say. General things to ask yourself when you're designing a character are: where are they from? What do they do? What are their aspirations? What country are they in right now? These will all help you move forward with your designs much faster. Let's take Roxy from Flying School Reboot as an example. Where are they from? She's from our world. The only difference is that there's magic. It's still just a regular modern day though. Conclusion, she's going to wear modern clothes. What do? She's a student. Conclusion, she will not wear anything inappropriate for this environment. What are their aspirations? She wants to be a fashion designer. Conclusion, and this is my favorite, she wears a whole different outfit and hairstyle every episode to show off her love for fashion and that she experiments with every type of look out there. It really brings visual storytelling to another level. It helps her feel more real. What country are they in right now? She is living in a country that's hot all year round. Conclusion, she should wear clothes that people in the summer would wear. Now, this is a bit of a violation of my own rules, if you will. Sometimes she does wear hot clothes, but sometimes we all do to look fashionable, so I suppose it is in character for her. What I do to keep her recognizable is obviously not with her silhouette, since that is ever-changing. Aside from her ears and tails, I actually keep her color scheme the exact same with every single outfit, just in different portions of each color going into the design. Now, what could help you with designing a character when you have no idea where to start? Pinterest, making mood boards, and also even using Pick Crew are all really fun and easy ways to gain inspiration for your character designs if you're struggling. As a last piece of advice, I'd also like to add, do not be married to any design. Don't fear reworking it until you are satisfied, is what I mean. Sometimes it can be very tough to design a character, especially if they are important to you or the story. You want them to be perfect, and that's to be expected. I think that's a shared sentiment overall between artists. But don't stress it too much, sleep on it, look at more inspo, try out different things, see what you like. You'll get there eventually. For example, I personally struggled quite a bit with Mason's design. Here's sort of a timeline of how he looked over time. Eventually, I ended up arriving at a good place that I felt happy with by changing him little by little. If I could do it, why wouldn't you be able to? And that's it for today's video. I hope you guys found it helpful, and if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share your thoughts down in the comments below. Next time we'll be going over storyboarding techniques and paneling. So it's going to be really fun. I hope to see you guys then. If you want to see art from me that doesn't make it into videos, you can follow my Instagram and Twitter at Eriss_VT. If you'd like to read my webcomics, you can find me on a webtoon by searching Eriss.png. I just recently released a new comic of mine, Flying School Reboot. We just talked about a character there, Roxy, earlier, so if you guys are interested, please do check it out. But all my links will be down in the description below. I'll see you guys again next time, but until then, bye bye!